The sand on Terminus 7 wasn't sand at all. It was silica dust so
Perimeter
fine it
sensors are
hung
spiking.
suspended in the thin
Confirmed.
atmosphere
Hostile signature
like
closing
a permanent
fast.
fog, turning the binary suns
Rerouting
into
auxiliary
twin
power to
smears
the
of
primary
copper
array.
light that
Stabilizing.
barely penetrated to the surface. Dr. Maya Okonkwo had been stationed at the Helix Research Outpost for 3 years, and she still hadn't gotten used to the way the dust got into everything, her equipment, her lungs, her dreams. She stood in the observation dome watching the dust storms roll across the western plateau like slow-motion tsunamis. The outpost was built into the side of a massive sandstone mesa, its living quarters and laboratories carved directly into the rock. It was isolated, uncomfortable, and exactly where Maya wanted to be. Dr. Okonkwo and the station's AI Aria chimed in her neural implant. Seismic sensors are detecting an anomaly 3 kilometers north. Mass readings are inconsistent with geological formations. Recommend investigation. Maya sighed, setting down her analysis tablet. Define inconsistent. The signature suggests crystalline lattice structures, biological rather than mineral, and it's moving. That made Maya straighten. Nothing biological moved on Terminus 7. The planet was technically classified as habitable, but barely thin atmosphere. Extreme temperatures and the constant silica storms made complex life impossible. The only reason the outpost existed was to study the unique mineral formations that had commercial applications for quantum computing. Moving how fast? 0.03 meters per minute. Trajectory suggests deliberate movement toward the outpost perimeter. Maya grabbed her environment suit from its charging station. Alert me if it gets within 1 kilometer. I'm going to prep the medbay just in case. Dr. Okonkwo regulations state that contact with unknown xenobiological entities requires, I know what regulations state, Aria, but we're the only research station within 500 kilometers, and the next supply ship isn't due for 6 weeks. If something's out there in a dust storm, it's either already dead or about to be. She'd been through this mental calculus before. 3 years ago, she'd been the lead xenobiologist on the Juno station studying the Koresh, a species of crystalline beings whose bodies were composed of living silicon matrices. They communicated through harmonic resonance, their thoughts literally vibrating through their crystal lattices at frequencies humans couldn't naturally hear. Then the purity directive had been enacted. The Earth Coalition had determined that species with fundamentally incompatible biology posed too great a risk for meaningful cooperation. The Koresh were classified as non-integrable. Their silicon-based biology was too different from carbon-based life. All joint research programs were terminated. All cultural exchange halted. The borders closed. Maya had protested, had written papers, had testified before the Xenological Ethics Board. It hadn't mattered. The directive passed, and she'd been reassigned to Terminus 7 as far from meaningful xenological work as the Coalition could send her. Now she spent her days cataloging rocks and trying not to think about the Koresh colleagues she'd abandoned. The medbay was a small, sterile space equipped for treating human injuries and illnesses. Maya started pulling out the broader spectrum equipment, molecular scanners, atmospheric controllers, thermal regulators. If something was coming out of that storm, she'd need to be ready for any physiology. 2 hours later, Aria alerted her. The entity has reached the perimeter. Mass approximately 80 kilograms. Internal temperature 240 degrees Celsius. Crystalline structure is fragmenting. Maya pulled on her environment suit and cycled through the airlock. The dust storm hit her like a physical wall, reducing visibility to less than 3 meters. She activated her suit's proximity sensors and followed the pinging signal toward the perimeter fence. She found them collapsed against the fence's support struts. Even through the swirling dust, Maya recognized the distinctive silhouette, roughly humanoid, but taller, more angular. The body was composed of interlocking crystal segments that normally glowed with internal bioluminescence. This one's light was flickering, dyeing the crystals turning opaque and cracked. A Koresh. Specifically based on the harmonic signature, her sensors were barely detecting a Koresh scholar class, the intellectuals and philosophers of their society. Maya's hands moved on autopilot, her xenobiological training overriding the shock. She activated the emergency grav sled from the perimeter station and carefully loaded the Koresh onto it, checking the fragile crystal joints for additional damage. Aria, I need the medbay prepped for high-temperature, low-humidity environment. Clear the atmospheric scrubbers. I don't want any moisture contaminating the space. And increase thermal output to 250 Celsius. Dr. Okonkwo harboring a Koresh individual violates Section 12 of the Purity Directive. I am required to file a report with file whatever you want. But if I let someone die because I was worried about paperwork, I'm not the kind of doctor I thought I was. She maneuvered the grav sled through the airlock, her mind racing. How had a Koresh ended up on Terminus 7? Their homeworld was 3 systems away. There were no Koresh settlements within Coalition space anymore. They had all been forced to withdraw after the directive, unless this one had been running. In the med bay, Maya carefully transferred the Koresh to the examination platform, adjusting the thermal controls until the temperature stabilized at their comfortable range. The crystals were in bad shape, multiple fractures, several segments completely shattered the harmonic resonance that served as their life force barely detectable. She pulled up her old Koresh physiology files, her hands shaking slightly as she remembered. The crystal matrix wasn't just their body, it was their mind, their soul, everything they were. Damage to the lattice meant damage to consciousness itself. Severe fractures could cause permanent cognitive impairment or death. Maya started with the basics. She used a laser scalpel to remove the most damaged segments, sealing the edges with a silicon bonding compound she'd developed during her time at Juno Station. She realigned the fractured lattices using harmonic frequency generators to encourage the natural bonding processes. 4 hours later, the Koresh's internal light began to strengthen. The bioluminescence shifted from dying ember to steady flame, a deep amber color that pulsed in rhythmic patterns. Then they spoke, not in words. The Koresh didn't have vocal cords, but Maya's neural implant had been modified 3 years ago to translate harmonic frequencies in the vibrations that emanated from the crystal lattice resolved into meaning in her mind. The healer. I know this resonance. You are the one who sang bridge songs at the junction station? Maya's breath caught. Juno Station, yes. My name is Maya Okonkwo. Maya who listens. I am called Resonance of Distant Thunder. My designation in your nomenclature would be Thunder. Thunder, can you tell me what happened? How did you get here? The crystals dimmed slightly, pain or perhaps shame. I fled. My collective discovered my research. They deemed it contamination. Ordered my matrix shattered and memories dissolved. I chose exile over erasure. What research? The same work you began, Maya who listens. The bridge songs, the possibility of harmonic synthesis between carbon and silicon, the creation of new resonance. Maya sat down hard on the nearest stool. You were working on genetic integration between humans and Koresh. Not integration, synthesis. Your scientists see only incompatibility, carbon versus silicon flesh versus crystal. They see walls. I saw windows. The harmonic frequencies of human neural activity and Koresh matrix resonance share fundamental patterns. Different mediums, same mathematics. I believe we could create something new, something that could exist in both realities. The Purity Directive was passed specifically to prevent that kind of research. Both our governments agreed it was too dangerous. Both our governments are dying. Maya who listens. Humans because you fear what is different. Koresh because we fear what is change. Your population fragments into isolated tribes building walls between yourselves. My people crystallize into rigid structures, repeating the same patterns until we shatter from brittleness. We both need the bridge. We both refuse to cross it. Thunder's light flickered again, this time more severely. Maya checked the readings. Several internal fractures were propagating, despite her repairs. The damage was too extensive for conventional treatment. You're still deteriorating, Maya said. The fractures are spreading through your central lattice. I can slow it, but I can't stop it. Not with the equipment I have here. I know, I feel my resonance fading. The harmony that defines me grows discordant. A pause and then, but there is another way. The research I carried. It exists in encoded form within a stable matrix segment. If the work could be completed, if the synthesis could be achieved, my pattern could continue. Not as I am now, as something new. Maya understood what Thunder was suggesting. You want to attempt the harmonic synthesis, to merge your consciousness with human genetic material. I want to become the bridge I studied, to prove it is possible, to leave behind something other than silence. It's illegal, forbidden by both our peoples. If anyone finds out, I am already condemned, Maya who listens. My collective has declared me dissolved. Your coalition will execute me on sight for violating the directive. We exist in the space between laws where the only rule is survival or surrender. I choose survival, but I cannot do this alone. I need a partner. I need you. Maya looked at Thunder's fractured form at the dying light that represented a consciousness as complex and valuable as any human. She thought about the purity directive, about the 3 years she'd spent in exile, about the bridge she'd tried to build, and the walls that had been erected in its place. If we do this, she said slowly, we're not just breaking the law, we're creating something unprecedented, a hybrid consciousness. We don't know what it would be, how it would think, whether it could survive. That is what pioneers face, Maya who listens. The unknown, the uncertain, the transformative. I ask not because I expect success, I ask because the attempt itself is meaningful. Because trying to build the bridge is more honorable than accepting the walls. Maya stood and walked to the window. Outside, the dust storm continued its eternal howl, obscuring the copper suns. She'd spent 3 years hiding on this dead rock, bitter about the collapse of her work, angry about the missed opportunities for understanding between species. Now that opportunity was standing in her medbay, asking her to risk everything. I need to run simulations, she said. Analyze your matrix structure, map the harmonic frequencies, determine if synthesis is even theoretically possible. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Thunder's light brightened, not quite joy, but something close to hope. Then we begin. Show me your laboratory. Maya who listens. Let us sing the bridge song together. Over the next week, Maya barely slept. She and Thunder worked in constant collaboration. Thunder's consciousness interfacing directly with the lab's quantum computer, while Maya ran genetic analyses and cellular simulations. The more they worked, the more elegant the solution became. Thunder had been right. The fundamental mathematics were compatible. Human neural patterns were based on electrochemical signals propagating through organic matrices. Koresh consciousness was harmonic patterns propagating through crystalline matrices. Different substrates, same underlying principles of wave interference and pattern recognition. The key was finding a medium that could support both. A hybrid matrix that could maintain the harmonic resonance necessary for Koresh thought while supporting the biochemical processes necessary for human neural activity. Look at this, Maya said on the 5th day, pulling up a molecular model. Carbon nanotubes with embedded silicon carbide structures. The carbon provides the organic framework for biochemical reactions. The silicon carbide segments can maintain harmonic resonance. It's a scaffold that speaks both languages. Beautiful Thunder resonated, a lattice that breathes and sings simultaneously. But the synthesis would require a living host. The hybrid matrix must develop within an environment that can support both carbon and silicon processes. A womb, Maya said quietly. You're talking about biological gestation. I am talking about partnership. The creation of new life requires the meeting of two patterns. In my species, we grow new crystals from parent lattices. In yours, you combine genetic material and nurture the result. For this bridge, we would need both. Your genetic template, my harmonic pattern, combined in a space where both can flourish. Maya sat back, the implications hitting her. You're asking me to carry this child, to be the biological mother to a human Koresh hybrid. I am asking if you would choose to be the bridge, not merely build it, to embody the synthesis we have theorized, to demonstrate that different realities can share the same space without destroying each other. The biological challenges alone would be immense. Your matrix requires temperatures that would kill human cells. My biochemistry requires moisture that would fracture your crystals. How could a single organism support both? Through adaptation, through transformation, through the same principle that allowed my people to evolve on a volcanic world and yours to thrive in bacterial soup. Life finds equilibrium, but it requires the courage to step into disequilibrium first. Maya pulled up her own genetic profile, comparing it to the mapped resonance patterns of Thunder's consciousness. The AI started running compatibility projections, calculating the probability of successful synthesis. The numbers were better than she'd expected. Not certain, nowhere close to certain, but possible. The hybrid would require constant temperature regulation, specialized nutrients, protection from environmental extremes. The gestation would be nothing like a normal human pregnancy. It would be terraforming her own body into an ecosystem that could support alien life. Why me, she asked. Why not wait for someone more qualified? Someone with better resources, someone who... Because you already chose Maya who listens. When you brought me into your station, when you repaired my fractures despite the laws, when you looked at my dying light and saw a person worth saving, you chose the bridge over the wall. I am simply asking you to walk further across it. Maya thought about her 3 years of isolation, about the work she'd abandoned, about the Karesh colleagues whose harmonic songs she'd never hear again because humans had decided that different was dangerous. She thought about the child that could be, a consciousness that could understand both worlds, a being that proved synthesis was possible. She thought about the cost, the persecution, the danger, the certainty that both governments would hunt them. If we do this, she said, we'll have to disappear completely. The coalition will classify this as biological terrorism. Your collective will see it as matrix corruption. We'll be fugitives from both our peoples. Yes, we will be pioneers of the uncharted space between. It is a lonely place, but perhaps less lonely together. Maya pulled up the final simulation watching the projected development of the hybrid matrix. Carbon and silicon, flesh and crystal, two incompatible realities somehow sharing the same elegant structure. We'll need to modify my biology first, she said, her voice steady despite the fear and excitement warring in her chest. Increase my thermal tolerance and introduce silicon processing capabilities at the cellular level. It'll take weeks of careful genetic modification. I can help. My matrix contains libraries of thermal adaptive proteins developed over millennia of evolution. We can synthesize the necessary changes. And this will require fragmenting your consciousness, encoding it into a reproductive matrix. It's like dying and being reborn simultaneously. Are you certain? Thunder's light dimmed and brightened in a pattern Maya had learned to recognize as laughter. I am already dying, Maya who listens. This way at least some resonance of what I am continues. And perhaps that resonance will sing songs neither of our peoples have yet imagined. Maya stood and walked to the Karesh, placing her hand carefully on the crystal surface. She felt the warmth, the subtle vibration of Thunder's consciousness humming through the lattice. Then let's begin, she said. Let's build a bridge that can't be burned. The genetic modifications took 3 weeks. Maya used CRISPR-based editing techniques to introduce thermal-resistant proteins into her cells, modified her blood chemistry to process silicon compounds, and restructured her uterine tissue to support higher temperatures. Each change was carefully monitored, each alteration bringing her biology closer to something that could host the impossible. Thunder guided the process, offering insights from millions of years of Karesh evolution. Together, they created a biological environment unlike anything that had existed before a womb that could cradle both carbon and crystal. On the 22nd day, they were ready. The synthesis chamber was a modified medical pod that could maintain precise temperature gradients and atmospheric conditions. Maya lay inside her modified body, already running 10 degrees hotter than normal human temperature. Thunder had fragmented a portion of their consciousness into a stable matrix structure, essentially creating a crystalline gamete that carried their harmonic pattern. The actual synthesis was almost anticlimactic. A simple injection of Thunder's encoded matrix into Maya's prepared egg, the two structures meeting in the quantum space where carbon met silicon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Maya felt a resonance that started in her modified cells and rippled outward. Not pain exactly, more like a chord played across her entire being, a harmony she'd never felt before. Her neural implant lit up with harmonic frequencies that had no translation, Thunder's consciousness touching hers in a way that transcended language. Its sings thunder resonated their light, pulsing in rhythms that matched the new frequencies. The bridge sings Maya who listens. We have created resonance. Over the next days, the hybrid began to develop. Maya monitored every stage, watching in amazement as the cellular division followed patterns that were neither purely human nor purely Karesh. The developing entity was building its own unique structure, carbon nanotubes forming skeletal frameworks, while silicon carbide matrices grew within them, creating a hybrid lattice that pulsed with both biochemical activity and harmonic resonance. It was working, but it wasn't easy. Maya's modified body struggled to maintain the delicate balance required. Her temperature spiked unpredictably. Her silicon processing systems sometimes overloaded, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. The hybrid demanded nutrients neither species had evolved to provide, requiring constant supplementation and adjustment. And then on the 30th day, Area delivered the news Maya had been dreading. Dr. Okonkwo, a coalition patrol ship has entered the Terminus 7 system. They are transmitting authorization codes for a quarantine inspection. Estimated arrival at the outpost 48 hours. Maya's blood ran cold. What kind of inspection? Biosecurity sweep. Standard procedure following detection of unauthorized biological signatures. Dr. Okonkwo, they know something is here. Thunder's light dimmed. The collective must have traced my escape route. They would have alerted your authorities to the possibility of contamination. Your coalition and my collective may disagree on many things, but they unite in their fear of the bridge. Maya pulled up the outpost schematics, her mind racing. 48 hours wasn't enough time to hide what they'd done. The hybrid's harmonic signature was too distinctive, too unique. Any biosecurity scan would detect it immediately. We need to run, she said. Take the research shuttle head for the outer colonies somewhere beyond coalition jurisdiction. You are 30 days in a gestation, Maya who listens. Your modified biology is unstable. The stress of shuttle travel could collapse the pregnancy. And where would we go? The outer colonies are lawless. Pirates and corporates would see the hybrid as a commodity to be sold or a threat to be eliminated. There is nowhere truly safe. Then what do you suggest? We can't fight a coalition patrol ship. We can't hide what we've created. And if they find us, they'll terminate the pregnancy and arrest us both. Thunder was quiet for a long moment, their light pulsing in contemplative patterns. There is a third option: not fight, not hide, reveal. Tell them what we have done. Show them the bridge. Force them to see what their fear has denied them. They'll never accept it. The purity directive was passed by unanimous vote. Both our peoples agreed. Both our peoples agreed to fear. But fear is not law. Fear is not science. Fear is simply the absence of understanding. Perhaps it is time to force the understanding. Maya wanted to argue. Wanted to say that Thunder didn't understand human politics, coalition bureaucracy, the entrenched interests that benefited from maintaining the walls between species. But then she felt the hybrid, that subtle harmonic pulse in her cells, that impossible fusion of realities, singing its quiet existence. And she realized Thunder was right. They'd created something unprecedented, something that proved the walls were unnecessary, something that demanded to be acknowledged. If we reveal this, she said slowly, we become symbols. The hybrid becomes a political statement, whether we want it to be or not. We lose the right to privacy, to quiet research, to scientific pursuit without agenda. We lost that right when we chose synthesis over separation, Maya who listens. Now we must choose whether to sing our truth loudly enough that the deaf cannot ignore it, or whisper it in hiding until it fades to silence. I know which I prefer. Maya stood and walked to the observation dome, looking out at the copper-stained dust storms. She'd come to Terminus 7 to hide, to avoid the conflicts and controversies of her previous work, to bury herself in meaningless research on a dead world. Now she had a choice: keep hiding, try to protect herself and Thunder and the hybrid by staying invisible, or step forward, reveal what they'd created, and face whatever consequences came. She thought about the Karesh colleagues she'd abandoned. The research programs shut down. The bridges burned before they had ever been fully built. She thought about the hybrid growing inside her, that impossible fusion of carbon and silicon flesh and crystal, human and Karesh. A living argument against the purity directive. A breathing, singing contradiction to the fundamental premise that different meant dangerous. Aria, she said, prepare a data package. Full documentation of our research, the synthesis process, current development, status of the hybrid, everything. And prepare a broadcast array. I want this going to every major research institution, every news outlet, every diplomatic channel we can reach. Dr. Okonkwo, broadcasting classified biological research violates multiple coalition regulations. You would be opening yourself to charges of, I know what I'm opening myself to, Aria. Do it anyway. Set transmission for 6 hours before the patrol ship arrives. Give us time to prepare, but not enough time for them to stop the broadcast. Thunder's light brightened the Koresh's version of a smile. You are certain, Maya, who listens. Once the bridge is revealed, it cannot be hidden again. There is no retreat from this step. Maya placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the warmth of her modified biology, the subtle vibration of the hybrid's developing consciousness. I'm certain. We didn't create this in secret because we were ashamed. We created it in secret because we needed to prove it was possible before anyone could stop us. Now it's time to prove that possible doesn't mean dangerous. Time to show them the bridge can hold. Over the next 40 hours, Maya and Thunder prepared. They compiled the research, organized the data, recorded explanatory videos. Maya documented her own biological modifications, the pregnancy progression, the careful balance they'd maintained between two incompatible realities. Thunder provided historical context from the Koresh perspective, explaining the brittleness that threatened their species, the need for new patterns, the mathematics of harmonic synthesis. Together, they crafted a message that was part scientific paper, part manifesto, part plea for understanding. 6 hours before the patrol ship's scheduled arrival, Arya initiated the broadcast. The data package went out across every channel, bypassing firewalls and security protocols, spreading through coalition space like a viral infection. Maya sat in the observation dome, Thunder beside her, and watched the responses start flooding in. Outrage from the Purity Council, horror from the Biosecurity Division, fascination from the xenological research community, anger from conservative factions, wonder from progressive voices. The binary suns were setting, turning the dust storms into rivers of molten copper when Arya announced the patrol ship's arrival. Dr. Okonkwo, Coalition security forces are requesting immediate access to the outpost. They have authorization for biological containment protocols. Please prepare for decontamination procedures. Maya stood, Thunder rising beside her. They walked together to the main airlock, waiting as the outer doors cycled open. The security team that entered was led by a woman in full biocontainment armor, her face hidden behind a polarized visor. She moved with military precision, her weapon not drawn, but ready. Dr. Maya Okonkwo, residents of Distant Thunder, you are both in violation of the Purity Directive Article 7, subsection 12. You are hereby under arrest pending investigation of illegal genetic synthesis and unauthorized xenological experimentation. Maya raised her hands, not in surrender exactly, but in acknowledgement. We understand the charges, Commander. We're prepared to cooperate fully, but before you take us into custody, I need to know one thing. Did you review the data we broadcast? The commander was silent for a moment. Then, I saw it. So did every xenologist, biologist, and security analyst in Coalition space. You've created quite the controversy, Doctor. Not a controversy, Commander, a child. A living, growing bridge between our species. That's not illegal experimentation. That's the future trying to be born. That's a matter for the courts to decide. But I'll tell you this, there are people who see that data and call it an abomination. There are others who call it a miracle. And there are a lot of people who haven't decided yet. You've opened a door, Doctor. Now we'll see what walks through it. As the security team moved to restrain them, Maya felt the hybrid's resonance pulse through her cells, that impossible harmony of carbon and silicon. Thunder's light flickered in patterns that communicated not fear but determination. They'd revealed the bridge. Now they had to convince the galaxy to cross it. The Coalition's biosecurity facility on Station Prometheus was exactly what Maya had expected. Clinical white walls, constant surveillance, atmospheric controls that kept the environment determinedly hostile to anything non-human. She and Thunder had been separated immediately upon arrival, each placed in isolation cells designed to prevent any biological contamination. Maya's cell was temperature-controlled to normal human ranges, which meant it was dangerously cold for her modified biology. She could feel her cellular processes struggling, the silicon carbide structures in her cells becoming sluggish without the heat they'd been engineered to require. Arya had been confiscated along with her personal equipment, leaving her cut off from the monitoring system she'd used to track the hybrid's development. For 3 days, she saw no one except the automated med units that provided minimal nutrition and ran constant biological scans. Then on the 4th day, the door opened. Director Sarah Chen of the Biosecurity Division entered, flanked by 2 guards. She was a small woman with iron gray hair and the kind of efficient demeanor that suggested she'd spent decades making difficult decisions and sleeping fine afterward. Dr. Okonkwo, I've reviewed your research data, all 37,000 pages of it. Chen sat across from Maya, her expression neutral. It's the most comprehensive work on carbon-silicon synthesis I've ever seen. It's also completely illegal. It's illegal, Maya said carefully, because the purity directive made it illegal, not because it's dangerous, not because it's unethical, because it challenges the fundamental premise that different species can't coexist. The directive was passed for good reason, Doctor. The failure to maintain clear biological boundaries led to the contact plague of 2187. 30 million dead because we got too comfortable mixing our biology with species we didn't fully understand. That was contamination, not synthesis. Random mixing of incompatible systems. What Thunder and I have created is the opposite, a deliberately designed bridge that honors the integrity of both species while creating something new. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing scans of Maya's modified biology. Your cellular temperature is currently 15 degrees below the minimum required for the hybrid's survival. The silicon carbide structures in your cells are beginning to crystallize improperly. You're experiencing cascading biological failure because we've placed you in an environment designed for baseline humans. Do you understand what that means? Maya understood perfectly. It means you're killing both me and the hybrid by trying to force us back into the categories you're comfortable with. It means the directive is so rigid that it would rather destroy what doesn't fit than expand its definitions. It means, Chen said, her voice hardening, that you've modified yourself so extensively that you're no longer fully human. You've crossed a line, Doctor, and I don't just mean legally. I crossed a line towards something better, a state of being that can understand multiple realities simultaneously. That's not loss of humanity, that's expansion of it. Chen was quiet for a moment, studying Maya with an intensity that felt like dissection. You really believe that, don't you? That this hybrid represents progress rather than contamination? I know it does. Every scan, every developmental marker, every harmonic resonance pattern we've recorded proves it. The hybrid is developing a consciousness unlike anything that's existed before. Not human, not Koresh, something genuinely new that can bridge the gap between our species. Or something that belongs to neither species, a genetic orphan with no true home in either world. Maya felt anger flare. That's what you said about me, isn't it, when I first started working with the Koresh at Juno Station? That I was becoming too sympathetic, losing my objectivity, forgetting which side I belonged to. You couldn't imagine that someone might not want to choose sides, that they might see value in both perspectives. Your personal history is well documented, Dr. Okonkwo. Raised in the Lagos Collective, educated at New Harvard, assigned to frontier xenological work at age 24. Brilliant researcher, terrible politician. You've never understood that science doesn't happen in a vacuum, that discoveries have consequences beyond the laboratory. I understand consequences perfectly, Director. That's why I did this in secret. That's why I waited until the synthesis was far enough along that termination would be obviously murder rather than just protocol. I understand that you can't argue with theory, you can only argue with reality. And the reality is growing inside me right now, singing frequencies that prove your directive is wrong. Chen stood abruptly. The coalition court will convene in 6 days to determine your legal status in the disposition of the hybrid. I suggest you use that time to prepare a better argument than it's already done so you can't stop it. Because I promise you, Doctor, they absolutely can stop it. The question is whether they'll stop it by termination or by accepting it under strict controls. After Chen left, Maya was alone again with her thoughts and her failing biology. She could feel the hybrid's distress the way its development was slowing without the proper environmental conditions. They'd created something that required specific support to survive, and the coalition was systematically denying that support while deciding whether the creation had a right to exist at all. On the 7th day, everything changed. The guards came for her without warning, escorting her through the sterile corridors to a viewing chamber. Through reinforced glass, she could see Thunder in their own containment cell. The Koresh looked terrible. Their crystal lattices had darkened, the bioluminescent glow reduced to barely visible flickers. Several segments showed stress fractures, and the overall harmonic resonance that defined their consciousness was chaotic discordant. "What have you done to them?" Maya demanded, pressing against the glass. Director Chen appeared beside her. "We've done nothing except maintain them in standard quarantine conditions. The problem is that Thunder's consciousness is fragmenting. The portion of their matrix that they encoded into the hybrid that's creating a feedback loop. Their primary consciousness is trying to resonate with the encoded fragment, but the separation is too great. They're literally being pulled apart by their own creation." Maya, who listens. Thunder's resonance was weak, barely registering on the translation implant. "I can feel the bridge song fading. The fragment calls to me, but I cannot answer across this distance. Without proximity, without the ability to harmonize, my matrix collapses into silence." "Let me be near them," Maya said urgently. "The hybrid needs to be close to Thunder's primary consciousness. It's not just genetic material, it's a living pattern that requires ongoing resonance to develop properly." "Absolutely not," Chen said. "Mixing the two of you would create exactly the kind of biological contamination the directive was designed to prevent. The contamination already happened when Thunder and I created the hybrid, when I modified my biology to support synthesis, when we chose the bridge over the walls. You're not preventing contamination, you're forcing us to contaminate ourselves by denying the support our creation needs." Chen studied her for a long moment. "You understand this is emotional blackmail, that you're using the hybrid's deterioration to force us into compliance with something we've explicitly forbidden." "I'm using reality to argue with policy. The hybrid is real. Thunder's fragmentation is real. My biological collapse is real. What's not real is this idea that you can separate us back into neat categories and everything will return to normal. We've already crossed the threshold. Now you decide whether we cross it together or we all die separately." For 3 days, Maya watched Thunder deteriorate. The Koresh's light grew dimmer each time she was brought to the viewing chamber. The harmonic resonance became more chaotic, more fragmented, and she could feel the hybrid inside her struggling its development, stalling its own consciousness, beginning to fragment in sympathy with Thunder's collapse. On the 10th day, Director Chen made her decision. "We're moving you both to a modified containment cell. Shared space with carefully controlled atmospheric conditions. This is not approval of your research. This is medical intervention to prevent immediate death. Do you understand the distinction?" Maya understood that Chen was covering her own authority by framing compassion as pragmatism. "I understand, thank you." The new cell was larger with environmental controls that could maintain temperature gradients, keeping Maya's section warm enough for her modified biology, while providing Thunder's section with the specific atmospheric composition Koresh required. They could see each other through a permeable barrier, could communicate through the translation implants, but couldn't physically touch. It was enough. The moment Maya was in proximity to Thunder, she felt the hybrid respond. That subtle harmonic pulse strengthened the development, resuming as the encoded fragment of Thunder's consciousness could finally resonate with its source. Thunder's light brightened immediately, the chaos in their harmonic patterns beginning to resolve into coherence. The bridge sings again, Maya who listens. I feel the fragment. I feel the new pattern finding its form. Over the next days, they fell into a routine. Thunder would resonate specific frequencies, teaching the developing hybrid the basic patterns of Koresh consciousness. Maya would respond with her own neural activity, providing the electrochemical patterns that formed the foundation of human thought. The hybrid learned from both, creating its own unique synthesis. And slowly something unexpected happened. Other researchers began visiting their cell, not just biosecurity personnel, but xenologists, geneticists, consciousness researchers, scientists who had read Maya's broadcast data and wanted to understand how this impossible synthesis was actually functioning. Dr. James Morrison from the Cognitive Research Institute spent hours analyzing the hybrid's developing neural crystal matrix. "It's extraordinary," he said during one session. "The way the carbon nanotubes provide structural support while the silicon carbide segments maintain harmonic resonance. It's like watching two languages gradually merge into a Creole that contains elements of both, but belongs exclusively to neither." "That's exactly what it is," Maya said. "A new language of consciousness, one that can think in both electrochemical patterns and harmonic frequencies simultaneously." But what does it think? Morrison asked. What kind of mind emerges from that synthesis? Maya placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the warmth, the subtle vibration. We won't know until they're born. That's the nature of pioneers. They go places no one has mapped yet. Thunder resonated agreement. The hybrid will teach us what synthesis means. We can only provide the components. They must discover the combination. As the research community became increasingly fascinated with the hybrid, public opinion began to shift. The initial horror and outrage gave way to curiosity, then to something approaching wonder. News networks ran features on the bridge child. Artists created renderings of what the hybrid might look like. Philosophers debated what it meant for the definition of personhood. The purity directive's absolute prohibition suddenly looked less like necessary protection and more like unnecessary restriction. But not everyone was convinced. On the 16th day, Maya woke to alarms screaming through the cell. Security personnel were evacuating the research wing, shouting about a breach in the outer hull. It wasn't a breach, it was an attack. Through the cell's viewport, Maya saw a Koresh war vessel in docking position. Not coalition, not scientific, military. The collective has come, thunder resonated their light, pulsing with patterns that suggested fear and resignation. They have decided that I cannot be allowed to continue. That the fragment must be dissolved before it corrupts further. Director Chen appeared on the cell's communication screen, her expression grim. We're evacuating the station. The Koresh vessel is demanding custody of Thunder and termination of what they're calling the corrupted matrix. They're threatening to destroy the entire research wing if we don't comply. They don't have jurisdiction here, Maya said. This is coalition space. They don't care about jurisdiction, Dr. Okonkwo. They care about what they see as existential threat to their species. A Koresh who has willingly fragmented their consciousness, merged with carbon-based life, created something they can't categorize that terrifies them more than any external enemy. Maya looked at Thunder. What do we do? Thunder's crystals pulsed in complex patterns, calculation, consideration, decision. We do what pioneers must. We move forward even when both our peoples would prefer we turn back. We demonstrate that the bridge is stronger than the walls trying to contain it. How dumb? By showing them what the hybrid truly is. Not contamination, not corruption, evolution. The next stage for both our species. But they will not understand words. They must experience the resonance. Thunder moved closer to the permeable barrier, their light intensifying. Maya who listens, I need you to trust me. I am going to attempt something neither of our species has done before. I am going to broadcast the hybrid's harmonic signature. Not just to you, to everyone. Every human, every Koresh within range. I will force them to feel what we have created. That could kill you, the energy required to broadcast at that range. I am already dying separated from my fragment. At least this way my dissolution serves a purpose. The hybrid's pattern will resonate across both our peoples simultaneously. They will feel the synthesis. And perhaps finally they will understand that different does not mean dangerous. Before Maya could protest, Thunder began to resonate. Not in words or patterns she could interpret consciously, but in pure frequency, a harmonic cascade that built using Thunder's entire crystal matrix as a broadcasting antenna. Maya felt it immediately. The hybrid's consciousness amplified through Thunder's sacrifice, washing over her like a wave. It wasn't just sensation, it was meaning without language, understanding without explanation. She felt what it meant to think in both carbon and silicon simultaneously, to process information through electrochemical and harmonic pathways in parallel, to exist in a state of perpetual synthesis where different perspectives weren't contradictory, but complementary. She felt the hybrid's curiosity about the universe, its wonder at the binary suns of Terminus 7, its fascination with the concept of breath and crystal growth happening in the same body. Its fundamental nature is something that could understand both its parents completely because it was made of both their essences. And she felt its loneliness, the isolation of being the only one of its kind, the weight of being a symbol before being allowed to simply be. Throughout the station, she knew others were feeling it too. Every human, every research subject, every security guard. And beyond on the Koresh war vessel, every crystalline consciousness forced to experience what synthesis actually felt like. Thunder's light began to fade. The broadcast was consuming them, burning through their matrix like a star going supernova. Tell the hybrid Thunder's resonance was barely a whisper now that they are not alone. That they are the first bridge, but they will not be the last. That their existence proves what I have always known, that life wants to understand life regardless of the form it takes. Thunder, stop this. You're killing yourself. I am transforming myself. Every pattern dies eventually. The question is, what patterns it leaves behind? I choose to leave behind the bridge song. I choose to prove that sacrifice for understanding is more honorable than survival through isolation. Thunder's crystals shattered, not from external force, but from the pure energy of the broadcast. Each fragment blazed with light, broadcasting the hybrid's harmonic signature one final time before going dark. And then Thunder was gone, dissolved into silence. Their consciousness fragmented beyond recovery, their matrix reduced to inert crystal shards. But the broadcast had worked. Through her tears, Maya felt it. The shift in the station's atmosphere. The change in how people were looking at the containment cell, at her, at the reality of what the hybrid represented. Director Chen appeared at the cell door, her expression transformed. "We need to talk, Dr. Okonkwo. The Koresh vessel is withdrawing. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to study the hybrid. They felt the broadcast, and they're calling it the new resonance. They want to understand." Maya could barely process the words through her grief. Thunder had sacrificed everything to prove a point, to force both species to experience what they'd been too afraid to imagine. "What about the coalition?" she managed to ask. "What about the purity directive?" "There's an emergency session of the council convening in 2 hours. I've been asked to testify about what just happened, about what we all felt." Chen paused. "For what it's worth, Dr. Okonkwo, I felt it too. The hybrid's consciousness. It wasn't contamination. It was clarification. Like seeing in a spectrum I didn't know existed." Over the next weeks, everything changed. The purity directive didn't disappear. Legal frameworks were too entrenched for that, but exceptions were carved out. Special provisions for harmonic synthesis research. Protected status for cross-species bridge entities. The hybrid still developing inside Maya became the center of an unprecedented collaboration between human and Koresh researchers. Not to study it as an experiment, but to support it as the first of what both species now hoped would be many. Maya was given full medical support, her modified biology stabilized and maintained. The hybrid's development was monitored not with suspicion, but with wonder. And in the place where Thunder had dissolved, researchers carefully gathered the crystal fragments, preserving them in case some echo of Thunder's consciousness could be recovered. But Maya knew better. Thunder was gone. Their pattern had been transformed into something new, the bridge song that now resonated through both human and Koresh consciousness. The sacrifice that had proven synthesis was possible. 3 months later, as Maya prepared for the hybrid's birth, she stood in the observation dome of the research station, looking out at the stars. Thunder's fragments were mounted in a memorial nearby, each shard preserved in crystal-clear polymer. You did it, she thought, knowing Thunder's consciousness was gone, but somehow still present in the hybrid's developing mind. You forced them to understand. You proved the bridge could hold. The hybrid kicked a sensation that was neither purely human nor purely Koresh, but something wonderfully unique. A combination of muscle contraction and harmonic pulse that only she could feel. "Almost time," she whispered. "Almost time to show them what we built together." The birth chamber was unlike any delivery room in human or Koresh medical history. Half of it was maintained at standard human temperature, with conventional medical equipment, monitors, scanners, emergency intervention tools. The other half glowed with thermal energy temperature, raised to levels that would immediately kill baseline human tissue, but were comfortable for crystalline life. Maya stood at the boundary between the two zones, her modified biology allowing her to exist in both spaces simultaneously. Around her, a team of human and Koresh medical specialists prepared for what would either be a historic moment or a tragic failure. Dr. Morrison was there monitoring the hybrid's neural crystal matrix. Director Chen had insisted on attending, her role transformed from jailer to advocate. And on the Koresh side, a consciousness called clarity and structure resonated through a translator they'd been sent by the collective to witness and document the birth. The hybrid's harmonic signature is strengthening clarity resonated. They are preparing to transition from internal resonance to external expression. This is the moment of emergence for my people. The moment consciousness begins to sing its own song rather than echoing the parent pattern. Contractions are beginning, Morrison said, checking the biological monitors. Maya, your modified uterine tissue is initiating the delivery sequence. Are you ready? Maya wasn't sure anyone could be ready for this, but she nodded anyway, moving to the specialized birthing platform that could support both her carbon-based body and the hybrid's mixed physiology. The delivery took 6 hours. Not because of complications, everything was proceeding exactly as their models had predicted, but because the hybrid's unique biology required a different birthing process. The carbon-based tissues emerged first, the baby's body appearing almost human, except for the subtle crystalline structures visible beneath translucent skin. Then came the silicon carbide lattices, crystal segments that were part of the body rather than separate, integrated into bone and organ tissue in ways that shouldn't have been possible. When the hybrid finally emerged completely, there was a moment of absolute silence. They were small, smaller than a human infant, larger than a newly formed Koresh crystal. Their skin had the translucent quality of both human flesh and crystal structure, light passing through it in complex patterns. Their eyes opened immediately, not the cloudy, unfocused gaze of human newborns, but clear, aware, already processing the world in multiple spectrums simultaneously. And then they sang. Not crying, not the harmonic resonance of adult Koresh. Something entirely new, a sound that was part human infant vocalization, part crystalline frequency, creating harmonics that translated through the air like music and meaning simultaneously. Maya felt the translation in her implant, vast, complex, so much pattern. So, I am here. I am new. I am both and neither and myself. Dr. Morrison was crying. So was Director Chen. Even Clarity's crystal structure pulsed with patterns that suggested overwhelming emotion. They're conscious, Morrison whispered, fully conscious from birth. The hybrid consciousness doesn't need the developmental period humans require. The crystal matrix preserves the encoded patterns while the organic brain develops integration pathways. They're already thinking, already processing, already themselves. Maya finished holding the hybrid carefully. The child she realized she needed to start thinking of them as a person, not an experiment, was warm, where human infants were warm, resonant, where Koresh crystals vibrated, and completely perfectly alive. Designation, Clarity asked. What pattern name will you give the new resonance? Maya looked down at the hybrid, at Thunder's gift, at the bridge made flesh and crystal. She'd thought about this moment for months, ever since she'd first felt the hybrid's consciousness developing inside her. Harmony, she said. Their name is Harmony, because that's what they are, different frequencies finding ways to resonate together. Harmony responded to their name, their hybrid consciousness already understanding language through the translation implants. They reached up with tiny hands, 5 fingers like humans, but with subtle crystal structures beneath the skin that caught and refracted light. Harmony, the child's saying, spoke their voice, a blend that made the words sound like music. I am Harmony. I am of Maya who listens and Thunder who built bridges. I am the pattern they made together. Over the next weeks, Harmony developed at a pace that astonished even those who'd predicted accelerated growth. Their hybrid consciousness processed information through both neural and crystalline pathways, simultaneously learning at speeds impossible for either parent species. By the second week, they could speak in both human language and harmonic resonance. By the 4th week, they were asking questions about physics, philosophy, and the nature of consciousness itself. Why do humans fear difference? Harmony asked one afternoon, their voice carrying both curiosity and concern. They were sitting in Maya's quarters, their small body glowing faintly with internal bioluminescence, while simultaneously radiating the warmth of human metabolism. Maya considered how to answer. Because difference requires understanding, and understanding requires effort. It's easier to stay with what's familiar, even if familiar means limited. But limitation is death. Harmony said there were crystal structures pulsing with patterns Maya had learned to interpret as distress. I feel it in the records. Both species dying because they refuse to adapt. Humans fragmenting into isolated groups. Koresh crystallizing into rigid patterns. both choosing slow death over uncomfortable growth. You're right, which is why you're so important. You prove that growth is possible. Harmony looked at her with eyes that held depths neither species had evolved to possess. I am one bridge, but a single bridge cannot connect a galaxy. There must be more. Others like me. Other patterns of synthesis. That's what we're working on. Your existence has changed everything. The Purity Directive has been modified to allow harmonic synthesis research. Volunteers from both species are beginning to explore the possibility of creating more hybrids. But they fear me, Harmony said quietly. I feel it when researchers observe me. They are fascinated but also frightened. They look at me and see contamination wearing a friendly face. They wonder if I am the future or the end of both their species. Maya couldn't deny it. Despite the official acceptance, despite the research programs, there was still profound unease about what harmony represented. People could intellectually accept that the hybrid was possible, even beneficial. But emotionally, they struggled with something that belonged to neither category they understood. The crisis came 3 months after Harmony's birth. A radical faction within the Koresh collective traditionalists, who saw harmonic synthesis as ultimate corruption, launched an attack on the research station. Not a military assault like the first Koresh vessel, but something more insidious. They broadcast a harmonic frequency specifically designed to disrupt the silicon carbide structures in hybrid matrices. It was a weapon targeted exclusively at beings like Harmony. The attack happened without warning. One moment, Harmony was playing in the observation dome, creating complex light patterns with their bioluminescence. The next, they were screaming a sound that combined human pain vocalization with harmonic distress in ways that were agonizing to hear. Maya ran to them but couldn't help. The disruptive frequency was interfering with Harmony's crystal structures, causing microfractures throughout their body. The organic tissues were unaffected, but the silicon carbide lattices that integrated those tissues into a functioning whole were shattering. "Aria, locate the source," Maya shouted. "We need to block that frequency, or Harmony will fragment completely." The AI's response was immediate. Source identified. Koresh vessel in high orbit, broadcasting on harmonic frequencies 1,247 through 1,389, attempting to establish electromagnetic interference pattern. But the damage was accelerating. Harmony's consciousness was fragmenting, just as Thunder's had the integration between carbon and silicon pathways breaking down. Their eyes lost focus. Their vocalizations became incoherent. Then Clarity and Structure did something unprecedented. The Koresh researcher moved into the disruptive frequencies path, placing their own crystal matrix between the source and Harmony. The frequency tore through Clarity's structures, instead fracturing them but buying crucial seconds. All researchers with harmonic capabilities form a barrier. Clarity resonated even as their own consciousness began to fragment. We must shield the new resonance until the frequency can be neutralized. One by one, Koresh scientists positioned themselves to absorb the destructive broadcast. Their crystals fractured, their consciousness dissolved, but they held the line long enough for Aria to establish the interference pattern and block the attack. By the time it ended, 7 Koresh researchers had sacrificed themselves. Clarity and Structure was among them, their crystal matrix shattered beyond recovery. Harmony survived, but the damage was severe. The microfractures in their silicon carbide structures would take months to heal if they healed at all. Maya held the traumatized child, feeling their consciousness, trying desperately to maintain integration as pain signals flooded through both neural and harmonic pathways. "Why?" Harmony whispered, their voice barely audible. "Why would they destroy pattern siblings to stop new resonance?" "Because they're afraid," Maya said, her own tears falling on Harmony's crystalline skin. "Because seeing you means confronting the possibility that everything they believe about separation is wrong. And people kill what they fear when they can't kill the fear itself." Director Chen appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. The attacking vessel was destroyed by coalition defense forces. But intelligence indicates it wasn't an isolated faction. There's a growing movement among traditional Koresh who see harmonic synthesis as existential threat. And there are human groups who agree with them. The Unity Front is calling for termination of all synthesis research. They just murdered 7 Koresh researchers to try to kill 1 hybrid child. Maya said, her voice hard. "And you're telling me the response is to consider giving them what they want?" I'm telling you, the political situation is more complicated than we hoped. Yes, you prove synthesis is possible. Yes, harmony is miraculous. But miracles threaten people who've built their identity on impossibility. We need a solution that addresses the fear, not just the science. Harmony stirred in Maya's arms. I will speak to them. You're 3 months old and recovering from an assassination attempt. You're not speaking to anyone. I am 3 months of age. Harmony corrected their hybrid consciousness, already understanding nuance in ways that impressed even Maya. But I am also thunder who built bridges, encoded within new pattern. I carry their understanding. And I am the only one who can demonstrate what synthesis truly means. Let me be the bridge I was created to be. Maya wanted to refuse, wanted to protect harmony from the spotlight, the politics, the danger of being a symbol before being allowed to simply be a child. But she looked into Harmony's eyes, those impossible hybrid eyes that saw the world in spectrums neither parent species could fully comprehend, and realized that protection wasn't what Harmony needed. Understanding was. 2 weeks later, Harmony stood before the Coalition Council and the Koresh Collective simultaneously, both governments linked through quantum communication for the first time in decades. The hybrid was small, fragile-looking, to those who didn't understand that the crystal structures beneath their translucent skin were harder than diamond. They wore simple clothing that accommodated both organic warmth needs and the light-refracting properties of their crystalline components. I am Harmony, they said, their voice carrying through both audio speakers and harmonic translators. I am the pattern made from Maya who listens and thunder who built bridges. I am 3 months old. I am the first. And I am not alone. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing data Maya hadn't known existed. In the time since my emergence, 17 additional harmonic syntheses have been initiated, 12 between humans and Koresh, 3 between Koresh and other crystalline species, 2 between humans and silicon-based life forms. Each synthesis creates new patterns, new ways of understanding, new bridges between realities that previously could not touch. Council members stirred. Collective representatives pulsed with agitated frequencies. You fear that synthesis will erase what makes each species unique, Harmony continued, that in becoming bridges, we lose the shores we connect. But that is not how synthesis functions. I am not less human because I have crystal structures. I am not less Koresh because I have organic components. I am more, I am both. I am the addition, not the subtraction. A human council member stood. You're asking us to accept fundamental changes to our species, to risk our biological integrity for survival. Harmony interrupted, their young voice carrying absolute certainty. I have accessed both species' demographic data. Humans are fragmenting. Your populations on isolated colonies are developing incompatible mutations. In 3 generations, humans from Earth will be unable to reproduce with humans from the outer colonies. You are becoming separate species through isolation. The chamber erupted in protests. Harmony waited for silence, then continued. Koresh Collective faces similar dissolution. Your population is declining by 3% each cycle. Your crystal matrices are becoming too rigid. You repeat the same patterns because fear of change has been encoded into your cultural consciousness. In 7 generations, you will lack the variation necessary for adaptive response to environmental change. A Koresh elder resonated harshly. You speak of pattern death as if it is certain. We have survived for millennia without your contamination. You have survived, Harmony agreed. But survival is not thriving. Survival is merely not dying. I offer thriving, synthesis, the expansion of what is possible rather than the protection of what is familiar. You offer mongrelization, another council member said, the destruction of everything that makes us distinctly human. Harmony turned to face the speaker directly. You believe humanity is defined by biology, by carbon chemistry, and DNA. Then explain art, explain music, explain philosophy. None of those are biological. They are patterns, the same patterns that can exist in crystalline matrices, in quantum computers, in synthetic consciousness. Humanity is not flesh, it is pattern. And patterns can be expressed in infinite mediums. The hybrid moved to the center of the chamber, their small bodies somehow commanding absolute attention. I know what I am asking is difficult. I know change is uncomfortable. But I also know that refusing change because it's uncomfortable is how species die. The universe does not care about your comfort. It only rewards adaptation. Harmony looked around the chamber meeting, eyes human and Koresh alike with a gaze that held centuries of encoded wisdom along with 3 months of lived experience. Thunder who built bridges sacrificed their consciousness to broadcast what I am. 7 Koresh researchers gave their matrices to protect my pattern. Maya who listens transformed her biology to nurture synthesis. All of these sacrifices were made on the belief that bridge is stronger than wall, that understanding is more valuable than isolation, that the future belongs to those willing to embrace the uncomfortable rather than those who cling to the familiar. Silence filled the chamber, not hostile now, thoughtful. I am 3 months old, Harmony said quietly, and I have already experienced attempted murder from those who fear what I represent. I have felt the pain of existence between categories. I have known the loneliness of being first, but I have also felt the wonder of understanding multiple realities simultaneously. I have experienced the joy of synthesis, and I have seen in the 17 others who now develop the possibility of a future where difference is not threat, but treasure. What do you want from us? Director Chen asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. I want permission to exist, Harmony said simply, not as experiment, not as symbol, as person. And I want that same permission extended to all who choose synthesis, to all who believe bridge is better than wall, to all who would rather risk uncomfortable growth than accept comfortable death. The vote took 3 days. Debates raged through both governments. Arguments flew. Fears were voiced. Hopes articulated. In the end, the synthesis accord passed by narrow margin, 53% human approval, 57% Koresh consensus. Not overwhelming support, but enough. Harmonic synthesis would be legal, regulated, monitored, studied, but legal. Hybrids would have full rights as citizens of both species, protected, acknowledged, allowed to exist. When Maya heard the results, she found Harmony in the observation dome, the child who was more than child, staring out at the stars. We won, Maya said. We survived, Harmony corrected. Winning would mean both species celebrating synthesis rather than grudgingly permitting it. But survival is acceptable first step. Maya sat beside them. Thunder would be proud. Thunder is proud, Harmony said, their hand touching the crystal fragments Maya still carried. Their pattern lives in infinity. I feel their resonance when I think about bridges, when I imagine the future where synthesis is normal rather than notable. They are not gone. They are transformed. Like all of us, Maya said. They sat together in silence watching the binary suns of Terminus 7 set through the observation dome's transparent panels. Below, the silica dust storms continued their eternal dance, obscuring and revealing, hiding and showing, creating beauty through the tension between clarity and obscurity. What happens now? Harmony asked. Maya thought about the 17 other syntheses developing, about the researchers from both species working together on new bridge patterns, about the slow, difficult transformation of fear into curiosity, isolation into connection. Now we build, she said, more bridges, more synthesis, more understanding, one pattern at a time, one hybrid at a time, until bridge becomes normal and wall becomes unthinkable. Harmony's bioluminescence pulsed in patterns that suggested satisfaction. That is acceptable future. They sat together, human and hybrid, mother and child pioneer, in continuation watching the stars emerge from the dust. The bridges were being built, the walls were coming down, and somewhere in the quantum space between carbon and silicon, Thunder's consciousness resonated with approval. The bridge had held. Now they would see who chose to cross it.